Kasun Wong, who is playing just a mono black devotion. I think there's a small splash here. I think there's a couple copies of Psychic Strike, which I did not expect to see.
Ooh.
So other than that, that's just a blue splash off of Temple of Deceit and Watery Grave. So Wong on your right, Tietze on your left. They'll roll some dice, figure out who's going to be going first here. But it's winning in time for these players. We do know at least one player who's in the top 8. That is Chris Van Meter. It went 8-0 with John Monster, so able to double draw in. We also believe that Harry Corvasi will be able to draw in this round with Esper Control. And if Maxwell Tietze makes it as well, we've got a pretty nice top 8 for tomorrow.
Yeah, a couple players recovering nicely from some disappointing performances in the Invitational.
So as both players will take a look at their hands here, we've got many a swamp for you at home in just a moment. So if you're a fan of the old Pack Rat deck, you've come to the right place this evening. Tietze going to keep, as will Wong, and we are underway here in round 10 of 10 of our first Standard Open.
Kasun definitely has some unorthodox card selections. It's a bit of a misnomer to call it Mono Black Devotion, as again he is splashing 2 copies of Psychic Strike off of 4 Watery Graves alongside 4 Temple of Deceits. He's also playing a main deck Whip of Erebos.
An attack here for 2 off of the Mutavault. That's part of the reason that Wong did play that on the first turn. So Tietze already down to 18. You see Tietze's hand. He's got Underworld Connections, among other things there. He has a Mutavault of his own, too.
So something of a reprieve for Kasun is the fact that Maxwell does not have any copies of Blood Baron in his main deck, simply playing with Desecration Demon, Bramaz, and Obsidat.
3 mana here from Wong. This is an Underworld Connection, so he's the first one to play the card drawing engine in this matchup. Tietze gonna take a draw step here after untapping that Orzhov Guildgate.
And card advantage, the main key in the matchup here. The decks are really good at trading 1-for-1, so whoever gets out in front with a card drawer is a pretty heavy favorite.
Tietze going to attack here with Mutavault. This leads to a rather unimpressive turn here for him because he's got to play a Godless Shrine tapped and just pass the turn. Wong is going to untap. He'll take a draw. Looks like a Desecration Demon has shown up.
And Max a little bit behind the 8 ball here, in part because of these comes into play tap lands. There is a cost for splashing.
There's a Temple of Deceit. So the first blue source here for Kasun. He's going to take a look at the top card. He's going to put that one to the bottom again. Not a huge splash of blue here, so we do classify it as mono blue devotion. Or excuse me, mono black devotion, just because of those 2 Psychic Strikes there. Underworld Connections activation, in with Mutavault we go. So most of the damage being done here by the 2/2-man land.
Good start here for Kasun thus far. You know, actually getting an incremental points of damage, pretty critical in the Black Mirror matches, as, you know, both players are taxing each other's life sources, or their own life sources rather, with Thoughtseize and Underworld Connections. So even though these Mutavault hits look pretty innocuous, they do matter.
So let's see what Tietze wants to do on his 4th turn of the game here. Again, he's pretty far behind just because there's inactive connections out there. He's behind on life and behind on cards. So let's see what Maxwell does want to do in this winning in. Start by playing a Swamp.
And part of the problem here is, given Max's situation, almost anything that he plays can be dealt with pretty trivially by Kasun. Any creature is likely to be killed by a plethora of removal spells. Underworld Connections, a good place for Max to start here, as card advantage again is key, but his life total is under some amount of threat.
Draw here from Kasun is a Mutavault. So not a bad place to start here. See if he wants to activate connections right away, or if he just wants to play some spells right now. Not a bad spot to get a maybe a Gray Merchant Vasphodel in for a little gain and drain of 4.
I also believe that Kasun has found one of his Psychic Strikes, so he may want to play a slightly more passive game here. And I like this, animating the Mutavault, getting in your shot for 2 points of damage again. If Max does something very threatening, he can answer it with Psychic Strike, and if he doesn't, he can simply draw a card with his connections.
Tietze going to go down another life there via the Underworld Connections. So he's going to untap here with 4, presumably 5 mana. If he does play a land this turn, that comes into play untapped. I'll see if he's got a big spell to play or not. I'd be really interested to see exactly if Psychic Strike does show up here. For example, an Obsidat would be a real juicy target for that.
And it's a way to clean up a couple problematic cards. There's not really that much in the way of removal that you can add in Mono Black to answer something like Blood Baron. You're looking at Devour Flesh, and that's not always reliable 100% of the time. So Psychic Strike is a really nice catch-all. Also probably shores up your game 1 a little bit against Sphinx's Revelation.
Orzhov Guildgate is going to come down there for Tietze before he passes the turn back. Kasun going to activate his Underworld Connection. He'll take a draw. Goes down to 16. Wong will draw another copy of Hero's Downfall. Now he has at least 2 of those in his hand. He also drew a Thoughtseize from the Underworld Connections activation. So maybe he wants to lead off with the discard spell.
And as silly as it sounds, Thoughtseize is a really good draw here for Kasun. he needs some information about what's going on with Max's hand, both in terms of how he wants to progress the game with these Mutavaults, and also at what point does he want to leave up Psychic Strike.
You see him reach for just a singular swamp, so it looks like we're going to go with the Thoughtseize. You see the grip here of Desecration Demon and Ultimate Price, a Devour Flesh, a Hero's Downfall, and a couple of lands there for Mr. Tietze. Nothing too crazy going on his side of the board.
Yeah, so Kasun's probably going to want to play a slightly more conservative game with his Mutavaults at this point as Max is flush with removal spells.
And as Kasun does take those cards down, really interesting on what he will want to take in this situation. Seems like maybe Desecration Demon, even though Desecration Demon isn't even really all that good in the mirror, especially when both players just have a boatload of removal.
Yeah, I would imagine it would have to be a removal spell here, as at this point Kasun's seen so many cards that I would be stunned if he didn't have an answer to Desecration Demon. And he does want to clear up a path either for these Mutavaults or some other threat down the line.
Hero's Downfall going to bite the dust. And now, Kasun, considering what land he wants to play, as he hasn't done that yet, so it's a Swamp. He's just going to pass the turn back again, leaving up the ability to cast a Psychic Strike or activate Underworld Connections, or both. As Tietze is going to use Underworld Connections, draw a card, go to 12.
What's really great about the Psychic Strike here is also it's totally concealed. Kasun just has a blue-black Temple in play that you see Temples all the time splash in a mono-black Devotion deck, so it's actually fairly concealed right now from Max. And if you feel something like Elspeth or Blood Baron, usually safe to just cast right off the top, or Obsidian, actually is not safe in this spot. It's especially pronounced if it's Elspeth, because that's a card you just assume is going to be good to go.
Yeah, and even though you may not expect Elspeth to do very much, it's just like, well, you know, we're in the Black Mirror and put this thing into play and just kind of move forward, get my soldiers, you'll probably kill it and all that jazz. A little bit different now.
Yeah, turn off your Devour Flushes for a little while. Even if you expect it to get killed immediately, still produces some value.
There's an activation of the Underworld Connections there from Wong. So 2 cards added, among them a Pack Rat.
And Kasun's already sort of carved the path for this Pack Rat a little bit by removing one of the removal spells. He is aware that there's an Ultimate Price still in Max's hand, but the Devour Flesh, Kasun has all sorts of insurance again with all these Mutavaults he has, so he may be able to set this up shortly.
Yeah, I wonder if he wants to go for it this turn or maybe a couple turns down the road. At the very least, by playing a Pack Rat this turn, it forces a lot of action here from Tietze. And there is Pack Rat. So it looks like this little game of I'll draw a card, you draw a card, I'll play a land, you play a land. Looks like that's going to be put to rest here in just a moment. Tietze is going to go down to 11.
Yeah, and in that sort of game, Psychic Strike is really, really well suited.
Yeah.
Because nothing can slip through the cracks as long as Kasun keeps his mana up. Discard spells can help Max push something through, but the discard spells are always going to be good in this sort of matchup.
Tietze going to use some mana here. Looks like it's going to be an Ultimate Price targeting the Pack Rat, which of course Kasun didn't know about. So Ultimate Price placed onto the stack.
And if Kasun just allows this to go without making a rat, it may start to raise some red flags on Max's side of the table. Why would he leave all of his mana up here when there's so much upside to making a rat? So I'm curious to see if Kasun actually wants to keep up appearances here and simply make a rat, or if he's committed to the Psychic Strike as insurance and just lets this go.
He does just let it go. That is a little bit curious, and you know, obviously the only reason I say that is because again, he could just activate Pack Rat and really just start some action here. If you're Tietze, as you mentioned, some red flags probably have to go off.
Yeah, and Kasun here just has a lot of respect for the cards that Max could play in here, especially Blood Baron. I mean, as far ahead as Kasun is on cards, all that can be invalidated if Max is able to land a Blood Baron, and Kasun either doesn't have Devour Flushes or Max is able to produce enough Mutavaults as insurance.
Yeah.
But now Max has to be really curious as to why Kasun was not willing to make a rat here.
There's a swamp there from Tietze. I think Tietze is actually playing a game like this, rather comfortable, and just a slow plotting affair, picking his spots as he did with that Ultimate Price. But that, again, that does have to be a little bit confusing, where you just have to assume, all right, they're going to make a rat, and then if I Devour Flesh, he'll activate his Mutavault, and he'll sacrifice that potentially, and it's tough to get out from underneath this. Underworld Connections activation here from Wong is going to put him down to 12, so we're even up here. Kasun will take a draw now. Night Veil Spectre the draw.
Yeah, now Kasun has this weird game plan that he's trying to facilitate here of progressing his board in a reasonable fashion while leaving up Psychic Strike and Underworld connections. But this allows Max to sort of keep his head above water because with the 2 cards he's able to draw himself every turn, he's probably going to be able to answer whatever threats Kasun is deploying each time. So the Psychic Strike gives Kasun quite a bit of insurance, but it's also just generally slowing the game down.
There is your Nightveil Spectre in the house. Obviously, it's going to be answered at some point. Surprise, surprise, Tietze has removal spell. I know. A real shockaroo there.
Yeah, and the way this game is playing right now, I think Kasun is a pretty heavy favorite, not only because of the Psychic Strike, but because he has 4 copies of Grey Merchant of Asphodel in his deck. Max does not have this card, and the range is going to provide him here if both players are just sitting here, drawing cards, saying go, killing each other's threats with an Underworld connections in play, gives Kasun a pretty huge edge. Forces Max to be the aggressor at some point, but again, Kasun flush with answers. A lot of spot removal in his hand, and the Psychic Strike is a huge insurance policy.
It's just really weird. I've watched a lot of mono black, mirrors or devotion mirrors decks that both have Underworld connections. I've never really seen a game play out in this fashion before.
Well, the fact that Kasun is holding up Psychic Strike means he's slowing down deploying his own threats. Because he's slowing down deploying his own threats, Max doesn't have very much to do with his mana either. Usually that's tied up just casting removal spells. And so both players are just playing this weird game. And I also suspect Max is just not quite sure what's going on Kasun's side of the board.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like, well, this is just a mono black devotion mirror. Okay, that's fine. I will just kind of plot on accordingly like I have been ever since I've played against this particular matchup, but this just doesn't feel the same. It's not Mutavaults are going to go active. Maybe. Okay, maybe not. Just a Desecration Demon here from Wong, forcing Tietze to have an answer for the 6/6 flyer, which mono black or black white mid-range or what have you, any of these devotion decks, they do have plenty to take care of the 6/6.
Yeah, but at this point, all that Kasun wants to do is keep doing stuff that forces Max to have to continue to draw cards himself to keep up with the Underworld connections and play the game to a spot where Grey Merchant finishes it off.
Hero's Downfall does take care of the Desecration Demon, so we'll move over to Tietze's turn.
And now we're also reaching the spot in the game. Keep in mind that, Max is also fairly low himself. Kasun has 2 Mutavaults in play, where it's a huge opportunity cost for Max to cast a Thoughtseize in the event that he draws one. So that's giving some additional power to the counterspell looming in Kasun's hand.
Hey, Grey Merchant of Asphodel, it's this card that everyone knows that it's a good one, but a lot of what these black-white mid-range decks or different versions of these decks have done is they cut that card for other options, but the life gain from that card is very important, especially in the mirror match.
Yeah, Grey Merchant's power is especially pronounced in the mirror match. The way that these black-white decks are trying to make up for that edge is Blood Baron, which is very powerful against mono black decks, of course. But the way the game is progressing right now, it's definitely a much bigger edge for Kasun to have access to Grey Merchant in his deck than it is for Max to have Blood Baron in his own.
So Tietze looks like he's gonna use 4 mana. He's actually gonna start by drawing cards. He's gonna go down to 8.
And this is a very subtle thing, but I even like the way that Kasun tapped his mana last turn, even though it looks like a mistake, tapping the temple instead of one of his swamps, because it just keeps up the ruse that there's nothing weird going on in his hand.
Yeah.
If he obviously leaves up double blue, it may give Max some inkling like, oh, maybe there's a counterspell going on. But by tapping his mana, what looks to be incorrectly, he actually conceals it a little bit.
Wow, interesting play there by Tietze. So here's Downfall targeting Desecration Demon. Tietze immediately says, Devour Flesh my own guy. I want 6 more life so I can continue to draw more cards. Kinda like it.
Yep. Again, his life total is something in some amount of risk here. He's also aware of the fact that Kasun, of course, has Grey Merchant in his deck. So using one of his cards here to gain 6 is a pretty good use of a removal spell, especially since they have been primarily just rotting away in his hand.
So Wong, I believe, drew another copy of Psychic Strike. I think he may be leading off with a discard spell here. We'll see. Maybe it's going to be a Mutavault activation. He's going to start by drawing a card. He's going to go down to 9.
I believe he has found his second copy of Psychic Strike as well, so. A lot of insurance with those counterspells.
Yeah, it just depends on how he wants to play him. He's going to fire Mutavault and come in here for 2. Leaving up the ability to counter twice here. And, of course, offering up this Mutavault to exchange with Tietze's Mutavault potentially or a removal spell from Tietze.
Yeah, Kasun's ahead on resources, so I think he's happy with the Mutavault trade. He's also pretty likely to use a removal spell on this Mutavault in the event that Max tries to activate it and block.
Sure.
Again, a lot of insurance because he has a counter spell in hand.
Tietze is going to try to. See what this is. Yeah, that's a trade that Kasun is happy with. Follow up, if there will be one. 1, 2, and 3. 4. Another Deso Demon. Yes, sir. Pass the turn back. Interesting back and forth here between these two players. A lot of patience, a lot of posturing.
Yeah, and Kasun's pretty, again, as long as nothing too disastrous goes on with the 2 counter spells that he has in hand and the threat of Gray Merchant coming off the top of his deck at some point here, he's got to feel pretty comfortable with the pace of this game.
Tietze looking at a boatload of cards here, provided to him from his draw steps and Underworld Connections. He's going to start by playing a Plains. Will we see maybe an Elspeth here?
And Plains not a card you commonly see in any number in Black-White Devotion decks. Max playing actually 4 copies of Plains in this deck. Part of this is because he has Burmaz, but he's also putting a premium on just having comes into play untapped lands.
Yeah. 13 is where Tietze will go. He drew a Thoughtseize. I think he might lead with that.
Yeah, now that he has more light to play with after Devour flushing his own Desecration Demon, it wouldn't surprise me to see it.
Maybe not. 6 mana. Wow. It's going to be an Elspeth, maybe? It is. Yeah, and Kasun is going to... You see Tietze getting the die.
Yeah, he doesn't even believe...
Whoa,
yeah.
whoa. What are you doing there, buddy? Psychic Strike, you're going to counter that. You saw how quickly Tietze went. Oh, my goodness.
Oh, wow, and that's 2 copies of Upset, too. Max with only 3 copies in his deck, kind of running out of ways to win here.
And he does have a whip, but that Psychic Strike was absolutely brutal.
Yeah. The trap had been set for the duration of the game now,
was so
and
patient,
Kasun
too.
finally got paid off.
Now here's a Thoughtseize from him.
Oh, you might want to do that when Kasun was tapped out.
Yep. He might Psychic Strike this too, actually.
Oh, I think it's pretty attractive. I mean, getting to hit Max for 6 plus whatever you want to do with your Mutavaults here when you have Gray Merchant in your deck.
He will not fight over it. So here's the grip. There's a Thoughtseize at an ultimate price, and just a couple of lands there from Tietze. Deciding he can pick a better spot with this other copy of Psychic Strike. One thing here for Tietze as well is he has no idea how many copies of Psychic Strike are looming here. Kasun going to attack here for 4 with the Mutavault. Going to leave Psychic Strike plus an Underworld Connections activation open before passing the turn back over to Tietze, who's drawn another land. He's going to go down to 8, and we'll see what he finds here. It's another land.
And Kasun's done a really good job of being patient. I would not have been able to turn down that Psychic Strike that turn.
Yeah, you and me both. Here's Desecration Demon.
I mean, don't you just want to snap him off sometimes?
Yeah,
Don't you just want to let him know?
Yeah, you got to teach him a lesson. Or maybe you'll learn the lesson. I don't know how it works, but Underworld Connection's going to draw Wong and Karn. He's going down to 6. That's a Nightveil Spectre.
Pretty crazy that Kasun has not found a copy of Gray Merchant thus
I'm a little
far.
surprised,
He's
too.
seen a lot of cards.
Hero's Downfall will take care of the Desecration Demon. Wong is going to draw a card. This is another copy of Underworld Connections. You see the life total's 8-6. Let's make it 8-5, shall we? One more card coming. Still no Gray Merchant, but a Temple Deceit may help him get there. That card's going to go to the bottom.
Again, 4 copies in his main deck.
Mutavaults are fired up, attacking here for 4. Tietze is going to go down to 4. Really putting a premium here is Kasun on the power of Mutavault.
Oh, he's done a great job with it.
Yeah. Hero's Downfall, the draw. Tietze going to go down to 3.
I mean, setting aside Max's own Underworld Connections damage, I don't think he's actually dealt any points except with these Mutavaults.
That's a Burmaz. I can't imagine Kasun doesn't have an answer to that.
It would be really hard to imagine the 20 Terror deck not being able to kill this thing. I guess we'll find out how.
There's a Hero's Downfall. Oh,
It looks good.
Yeah.
Story checks out.
that'll do just fine. As Kasun will untap all those lands. See the life totals now, it's 3-5. Looks like Devour Flesh was the draw here for Kasun. Going to start by playing a Swamp. Going to fire up some Mutavaults. Attack here for 4. Tietze, a removal spell. Maybe now it's time to snap off that Psychic Strike.
Yeah, I mean, he's not casting Bile Blight right now, right? So
Man. The patience is, it's unbelievable.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I get it, but I just want to, I want to get him.
Nightfield Spectre past the turn back. Tietze can't activate that Underworld Connections, and he concedes the game. Kasun Wong is going to win game number 1 here over Max Tietze. Mono Black Devotion with a small splash for just 2 Psychic Strikes is going to win in game number 1 over Black White Midrange. And that was a display in patience from the player on the right.
Yeah, and it's actually pretty sweet, Psychic Strike, in a number of respects in this deck, because it is a hard counter that only is a single blue. Not a lot of that going on in Standard. Of course, Syncopate, not really a great choice for this deck, as you know, the Mono Black Devotion deck's using a lot of mana on its own main phases for creatures and such. And of course, Negate and Essence Scatter don't cover everything, so Psychic Strike fills a really unique role.
We'll take a look at the sideboards here to begin things. Tietze is going to be on the play, so I'll take a look at an Underworld Connections, 2 Sin Collector, 3 copies of Blood Baron of a Scopa. And you've got 2 Doomblades, a Revoke Existence, 3 Life Vein Zombies, 2 copies of Pack Rat, and Erebos got a lot of really nice options here. You've got the Underworld Connections, that's 1. 2 Sin Collectors, that makes it 3. 3 Blood Barons, up to 6. Revoke Existence, that's 7. Pack Rats, that's 8 and 9. Erebos, that's 10 cards that Tietze could presumably want in this matchup.
And it makes a lot of sense for him to want this much action because he's giving up a lot of percentage points against Mono Black Devotion game 1. His threat base is Desecration Demon, Bramaz, and Obsidat. Not really a creature base that well equipped to handle Mono Black Devotion. There's no copies of Pack Rat, no copies of Blood Baron, so I think the additional higher quality threats alongside the additional discard spells is what he's going to want to do.
On Wong's side, what do you see over there?
3 copies of Duress, 2 copies of Bio Blight, 2 Doomblades, 2 Ultimate Price, 2 Erebos, 3 Lifebane Zombie, and 1 Notion Thief.
Absolutely. We need a story to tell.
A little additional spice here. I think that you're definitely going to see Lifebane Zombie come in as the threat of Blood Baron is huge here. Kasun needs to shore up that liability, the additional discard and card drawing and Erebos and Duress. He may want 2 copies of Bio Blight, although it's a little awkward in symmetrical matchups. He can probably anticipate. If Max didn't have Pack Rat in game 1, it's reasonable that he has it in the post-board games. I actually don't think the 1 Notion Thief is out of line either. These games go on
bad.
These games go on for a long time. At the minimum, you can shut down 1 Underworld Connections activation, and if Max is somehow caught without removal for it, then you're shutting down Erebos and Underworld Connections for the entire game.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we brought that in and is able to catch Tietze off guard here. And we know that Wong is patient. He'll be able to pick his best spot.
He's in no rush.
If you guys are just joining us at home, we do appreciate it. Cedric Phillips, Patrick Sullivan, along with Osa Levodovich. In the sideboard, we do have Nick Miller and Andrew Shrout and the rest of the Star City Games live crew. At SCG Live, hashtag SCG Invi for your tweets all weekend long. We're on day 2 of 3 here in Charlotte. Yesterday we had 8 fantastic rounds of Invitational. We had 8 more today. And if you haven't seen the players who have made the elimination rounds, definitely go to our coverage page so you can see that Joe Lissette and Tom Ross, among others, will be playing tomorrow to crown our champion of our first Invitational here in Charlotte. But right now, we've got our last round of the Swiss of our Standard Open. And then tomorrow, bright and early, 8 a.m. is where we'll start the elimination rounds of that. Then we'll transition into the elimination rounds of the Invitational. Then we'll join our Legacy Open in progress, do the elimination rounds there. And I suppose that'll be just enough match to cover this weekend.
Yeah, 3 trophies handed out tomorrow.
Yeah.
An early point boost for people who are pursuing the Season 2 invite, whether it's through the Standard or Legacy Open, and of course, an Invitational champion. Not only that 10K for first prize, but locking up one of the 16 invites to the Players' Championship.
And we cannot forget their likeness on a card as well.
Yeah, the
most important part, arguably for some. As you see, Tietze is going to shuffle up here, as will Wong. Game number 2 will be underway shortly for you guys at home. It's been a fun weekend thus far. You know, the Invitational, we did not see a lot of Esper Control do particularly well. We saw some wacky things. Some people try some aggressive brews. It worked out for Tom Ross. Almost worked out for Kent Ketter, who ended up in 9th place on Breakers.
Yeah, just a little bit short. I'm really excited, by the way, about the potential for a Joe Lissette Angel token. I'm not sure if he necessarily wants to make an Angel, but an Entreat token for Joe,
I think
that could be really nice.
I think it's got to be. That side by side with Baneslayer Angel, I bet he can't wait to get paired against you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he doesn't play with creatures. What else is he supposed to do? You know, it's got to be Entreat.
Yeah. I'd imagine it has to be Entreat if he had a choice. I would be very surprised if it was something else.
I mean, we will see.
Yeah. I'm trying to just think of some sweet legacy tokens that people can make. Legacy decks and their tokens. We already have a Germ token and Brian Braun to win. But obviously, there's a lot of fantastic options. And whoever does win the Invitational tomorrow, as you mentioned, outside of that $10,000 and invite to the Players' Championship, which is worth something as well, you get the likeness on a token. So it'll be fun to watch those best of 5s all the way throughout.
What would your token be? I know you, of course, have your Goblin token.
Master of Waves Elemental token, because I want Hydro-Man or Hydro-Man, however you want to pronounce it.
Yeah, Hydro-Man.
I like Hydro-Man. Hydro-Man is my favorite villain from the
Oh, that's a
Spider-Man.
good choice.
So I would like to see Kristen Pleskow draw me as a water being.
I think that I would have to choose some sort of red or white human soldier token, but there is something sweet about saying, make me a Vraska assassin token.
Ooh, that'd be sweet.
It'd be pretty sweet.
You have a nice hood on or something.
Really narrow, real
Yeah,
narrow.
you're not going to get a lot of play on the camera, but boy, when you do.
Yeah. Me skulking around in a hoodie and a baseball cap or
Yeah.
whatever, that could be really nice.
What's going on? Nothing.
What are you up to?
Yeah.
Why don't you mind your business?
Attack for 1. Dead. Well, Tietze is on the play. He's going to take a look at his 7 cards. He's happy. Kasun Wong will do the same. He's happy as well. So let's start game number 2, shall we? Thoughtseize, not a bad place to start.
Yeah. Let's see what's going on over here.
See a Night Veil Spectre, a Desecration Demon, a Psychic Strike, a Grey Merchant of Asphodel, along with 2 Swamps and a Temple of Deceit.
Not a terrible looking hand, although hands like this very rarely develop well in the Black Mirror matches because the creatures don't really matter very much. They're pretty trivial to deal with. It's the spells you're looking for. So on the surface, this hand looks okay, but it's very susceptible to Max just having an Underworld Connections or an Erebos and running away with the game that way.
Teet's going to take a look at his hand before selecting a card. Of course, at 18 life from the Thoughtseize. But what's going to go? It'll be the Night Veil Spectre, arguably the most powerful card here.
Yeah, I mean, it's castable. It's very, very threatening. And Max is bringing in his own copies of Sin Collector and Duress, so I think he would rather leave the spell in Kasun's hand and try to deal with the creatures in other ways.
Temple of Deceit's going to leave the top card on top. Teet's going to play Temple of Silence. He'll do some scrying as well. His is going to go to the bottom. He's happy to pass the turn back over to Wong, who will untap that Temple. He'll take a draw. It's a copy of Pack Rat. He can put the pressure on right away, force Teet's to have an answer. But he's going to go with Temple instead. Again, patience, patience, patience.
Yeah, the likelihood of him casting a Pack Rat here and it just running away with the game is fairly low, so I also prefer just playing the Temple, getting your comes into play tap lands out of the way.
A couple months ago, that would not be the case. That's for sure. BioBlight has definitely changed some things.
Yeah. Pack Rat went from unbeatable to now kind of beatable,
Yeah.
which is a huge shift in the matchup.
I do agree. See what Tietze wants to do. He's going to play a Plains, just pass the turn back. Nothing crazy going on here for Max. Take a draw, Will Wong. He's going to play a Swamp, just pass the turn back.
Psychic Strike at the ready.
Tietze with the Mutavault, he'll pass the turn back. A lot of draw go action here. It feels like I'm watching an Espermere. Mutavault the draw here from Wong.
The lands aren't helping either.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Will it be Mutavault or will it be Temple here from Wong? It will be Temple. Take a look at the top card. He's happy with that. He'll pass it over back to Tietze.
Yeah, I think all other things being equal, both players should just focus on getting their comes into play tap lands out of their hand as soon as possible because you never know when mana is going to be the bottleneck. And these decks also often struggle trying to cast multiple spells in the same turn. There's so many 3 and 4 mana spells, so I understand wanting to deploy the Mutavault to give yourself a little bit of extra flexibility, but just get those temples out of the way.
Tietze a rather deliberate player if you've never got the opportunity to watch him play. However, it does seem like he might be a little unfamiliar territory just because there's some number of counter spells looming there in Wong's deck. And it's not something you actually have to worry about when you play against Mono Black or any other Black Devotion-esque deck. Because here's a Mutavault there from Wong.
And again, I think a lot of what's changing the pace of play here for Max is the fact that he knows about Psychic Strike. He's brought in a lot of duress effects. And so he wants to wait for one of those to come off before he starts doing anything. But in the meantime, he sort of has to sit on his hands because he doesn't want to just run something into the Psychic Strike.
Here's a Pack Rat. That's going to be targeted by Hero's Downfall. Will Kasun finally tap low, not have Psychic Strike at the ready? That's the question. He could activate Pack Rat and make another one if he'd like. We saw in the previous game that he had no interest in doing that. He has no interest again.
Yeah, I mean, he has to be aware of the fact that his spells are a little less reliable post-board, because if Max has any action in his sideboard, it's additional discard spells that are going to be spell-specific. So there is some incentive for Kasun to cash it in for good value when he has an opportunity to do so. But at the same time, it's so valuable in terms of preventing Max from deploying something like Elspeth or Erebos until he finds one of those discard spells that, as long as Max doesn't do anything, Kasun really doesn't have much of an incentive to do anything either.
This is true. Tietze looks like he may fire at Mutavault, and that's the choice. In for 2 we go. 2 damage coming across.
Yeah, again, nothing else going on, so might as well try to tag you for 2.
Watery Grave the draw here. Again, the blue sources in this deck from Wong are rather reliable with 4 Watery Graves and 4 copies of Temple of Deceit. The question is, what does Wong want to do here on this turn? Because now Tietze has decided, you know what, there are definitely going to be some situations where I'm more than comfortable attacking. Watery Grave's going to come to play tap, pass the turn back.
And I think the big thing here is that Kasun's trying to get into a spot where he can deploy the Erebos in his hand with mana up to protect it from Psychic Strike, either Erebos or whatever large follow-up Max has after the fact.
You're really putting a premium on Erebos, which, to be fair, makes sense. It's a great card in the mirror.
Yeah, although it is a little tough. If Kasun keeps on taking these Mutavault shots, he's only taken 1 thus far, but he's taking a line of play that might set himself up for future Mutavault hits. He might not have that much life to play with.
Tietze no real interest in attacking there, as you see Wong just draw a copy of Underworld Connections. It's really interesting to me how just one counterspell can kind of change everything the player wants to do. Especially because the spells that Mono Black can resolve are so very powerful, as now Erebos, God of the Dead, is placed under the stack.
And now it's, Max has got to move now.
Yeah, you can't just sit there forever now. Tietze does let Erebos resolve, of course, as he is a black-white deck. No counter spells hanging out over there. He draws a card of his own. I believe he may have drawn his Erebos. However, doesn't mean that it's going to resolve because of that Psychic Strike.
Yeah, it's interesting. Max has taken this line in this game because he has so many Thoughtseizes, Duresses, and Sin Collectors, and all he really needed to do was draw one of them to get the Psychic Strike out of there and start advancing his board. But he's taken so many turns off trying to play around the Psychic Strike, and now he's compelled to act. He's facing down Erebos, and Kasun even has a backup Underworld Connections in case something goes wrong with this Erebos. So Max definitely picked a line that I thought was appropriate at the time, but he just hasn't found one of his discard spells since then, and now he's a little bottleneck with action, and Kasun might be able to get one of his card advantage sources online fairly soon.
Looks like it's time to cast a spell here for Mr. Tietze. The question is, which one will it be? He's tapping 4 mana. This is an Erebos. I believe that this may be worth fighting over, but we will see. Again, Wong has displayed a supreme amount of patience thus far when we watch him play.
I think he might have just let this resolve and say, okay, I get to draw a card first. I get to untap with Psychic Strike. It looks as though he is going to fight over this.
He's making a move. There's a Psychic Strike, going to mill 2 cards. It's a Thoughtseize and a Blood Baron. Those are 2 pretty good cards. It's got to be Revoke Existence, yeah. That's what I figured. Erebos being the test spell just happens to be a very, very good one.
Yeah. And now gameplay can kind of proceed as normal.
Yeah, but the interesting thing here is that even though, Tietze spent his entire turn basically getting an Erebos off the table, look how much mana Wong has out here. He's ahead on lands, and now he can go, something along the lines of, all right, play Underworld Connections, play Desecration Demon with my mana up, your turn. Now you have to, now Tietze has to keep playing catch-up.
Yeah, Max got fairly unlucky through the progression of this game as he found neither lands nor a discard spell. He actually drew kind of the worst of it, which was just a bunch of other 5-mana spells.
And here is the Underworld Connections and Desecration Demon. Now it's like, okay, Max, your turn is taking care of my 6/6 and or taking care of my Underworld Connections.
Yeah, that was a great turn for Kasun here. Again, Max is in a position where he can probably only cast 1 spell a turn.
Yeah.
That's just the nature of the black-white deck. He certainly can only cast 1 meaningful spell a turn.
This looks like this may be a Blood Baron of a Scopa. Potentially an Obsidat. It is a Blood Baron. So the powerful 4/4 is going to come into play. Wong's going to go down to 17. He's looking for a card, and he's about to get one.
Max does also have Devour Flesh Insurance as the board currently stands. He has a Mutavault left over.
Yes, he does. Takes a draw. Not sure if Wong found what he's looking for or not. He's going to lead off with a Thoughtseize. Or excuse me, a Duress. Pardon me. See a couple of cards here. There's a Blood Baron, there's a Whip of Erebos, a Bile Blight, and an Hero's Downfall. Again, Max is just a little bit bottlenecked on mana, so we're still in one spell a turn territory.
Yeah. And that's why even if Kasun only has Devour Flesh, it's still fairly bad for Max to lose his Mutavault.
There goes the Whip of Erebos. Wong gonna draw a card. See if he finds anything of use here.
They're really looking for Devour Flesh plus something that can kill a Mutavault.
Wong does have a Mutavault in his hand himself. He's going to attack here for 6. Tietze is going to go down to 12.
Another copy of Erebos would also be excellent here to shut off the life gain.
Not bad. So your Thoughtseize. Probably takes the Baron. Yeah. We could see a follow-up here with the Grey Merchant for 6, but he's just going to pass the turn.
Curious to see what Kasun's long-term plan is here about this Blood Baron. I mean, more than likely, it's simply find Devour Flesh plus another removal spell.
Yeah, wouldn't surprise me at all if that's what it is.
Oh, and has Max picked up Elspeth?
He has. Will he cast it, though? Looks like he may be main phasing a Hero's Downfall? Potentially? Tough to say. This is 5 mana. No? Maybe not. He's going to go with Hero's Downfall right now. Get that thing off the table, he says. So there goes the Desecration Demon. Pass the turn back over to Wong, who's going to untap all those lands. You see the life totals here, 10 to 16. Take a draw.
Grey Merchant in hand.
Yeah.
I imagine he has to just dig with connections right away here.
Yeah, it's probably step 1 as he goes down to 9. He'll be having a new card coming here in just a second. Another copy of Connections.
Not shabby here, as he does have Grey Merchant.
Yeah, it'd be a draining gain for 6 if you were to play Connections and then cast the Grey Merchant, which is, as you mentioned, not a bad turn. He does have a Thoughtseize still as well, so those are the 3 cards he's working with. And he will fire that off, so he's going to go down to 7. See Bile Blight and a copy of Elspeth. Which one does he care about more? Bile Blight obviously taking care of 1 or potentially 2 Mutavaults, and Elspeth just being Elspeth.
Yeah, I had to imagine that he has to take Elspeth here. Given that he's already under the gun from Blood Baron and his out to this is likely some copy of Devour Flesh, I don't think he could afford for Max to make 3/1 with tokens and then also still have an Elspeth in play.
And he will take the Planeswalker with the Thoughtseize. So Wong is down to 7. Is it time to cast Grey Merchant yet?
I mean, I think he just wants one more turn of being able to deploy Underworld Connections. Because he can still enchant a land, leave a Mutavault back to block a Mutavault or a Blood Baron as appropriate, draw another card with Underworld Connections, have a bigger Grey Merchant, and access to more cards in subsequent turns.
Here's 5 mana. There's your Grey Merchant. Draining gain for 4, so it's like the Blood Baron did nothing almost. Tietze goes down to 12, Wong back to 11, pass the turn back. Tietze quickly untaps. You see, we're under 15 minutes in the round, so these players need to get moving and grooving. Here it comes. Exchange of life total. Tietze up to 16, Wong down to 7. Wong gonna untap. Tietze with all of his mana over there and Mutavault among the lands. Underworld Connections, of course, in Wong's hand. He's going to go down to 6. Let's see what he finds hither. It's a Pack Rat. Only a very good Magic card, and still not even really that bad in this situation. Maybe just not great.
Yeah, the problem is that he knows that Max has a Bile Blight in hand, so that it's very challenging for the game to go down that road.
Looks like we got some mana being tapped here. 1, 2, 3. Connections. Draw a card, down to 5. What's he find? Wasn't quite sure what that was. Drew that one pretty quick.
And this is why I think that I would have reordered the way that Kasun took his turn last turn, is because the cards matter quite a bit to him at this stage, and also getting more life off of that Grey Merchant would have been big as well.
All right, time to try to activate a Mutavault. Activates both of them.
Not a huge fan of this when you know about the Bile Blight.
Yeah, you get 2 for 1 there. I do not love that play.
I don't like that for multiple reasons. I think, you know, Kasun's on chump block duty regardless. And also, as long as you have a Mutavault up to chump block, he can't send in his own Mutavault, because if his answer is Bile Blight, then he loses his own Mutavault.
Yeah, and now he's just going to see the game. So Max Tietze is going to win game number 2, and we're going to move on to game number 3 here in just a moment between Kasun Wong and Maxwell Tietze. I'm with you. That double activation of Mutavault in the face of Bile Blight was very, very strange there from Wong.
Also, there's, you know, even if you don't know that Bile Blight's in his hand, the odds that you double block there and Max just says, yeah, okay, I have nothing, are really low.
So slim, right? Tietze, a premier player, wouldn't even make the attack, I don't think.
Yeah, exactly. So I think you want to use your Mutavaults in that position to just be a chump blocker that turn, and then the following turn with your 2 connections, you get a lot of draws at it. If you find a Gray Merchant, you have a lot of breathing space. And of course, if you're able to find an Edict plus another removal spell for Max's Mutavault, then you actually get the Blood Baron off the table altogether, and things get very easy from there.
Well, we're going to have game number 3 on the way here. Kasun Wong will have the option to play or draw, presumably taking the play, and whoever does win this match will be making the elimination rounds, which do again start bright and early tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. East Coast time. We'll do our quarterfinals then with Patrick and Osip. We'll bring you the semifinals. And of course, our finals, we'll crown our first of 3 champions tomorrow. And don't forget, during all the elimination rounds, we do have our premium giveaways 3, 6, and 12 months. So if you're looking for some articles by Brian Kibler, Brad Nelson, maybe the return of Above the Curve, check it out. Get some free months of premium. Who do we like here? Any changes? You see Tietze is going back to his sideboard here. I'm not sure if he's changing anything or not, but do you like black-white or maybe the mono-black with a small splash of blue?
I like the black-white deck in this matchup. I think game 1, having access to hard counters is pretty valuable, because Max is eventually trying to put the game into a place where he has one of his high-impact spells. Blood Baron, which he doesn't actually have game 1, but Obsidian, Elspeth, something along those lines. In the post-board games, most black decks are loading up on Duresses, and if they have white in the deck as well, Sin Collector is another tool they have available. And in the face of those cards, a 3-mana counterspell is just actually something of a trap. You saw a case in there holding up mana for a lot of the game. Max actually got fairly unlucky with the cards that he was drawing in that sequence. He was drawing neither lands nor discard spells, and he was trying to set the game up where he could just attack Kasun's hand in one turn, start playing stuff, and really set his tempo back. Even though Max didn't draw especially well over the course of those turns, he was still able to eventually overwhelm Kasun's defenses, in part because Kasun spent so many turns saying go with 3 mana unused. Those were turns that he could have spent playing Underworld Connections and drawing a card, getting Erebos online, and so forth. So given how much access to discard Max has, I think the counterspells get a lot worse in the post-board game, and Max's deck becomes much more effective at forcing through Blood Baron with protection, which is the best recipe possible against a deck like Kasun's.
We'll see if Max can put that all together for this 3rd and final game here. Under 10 minutes. I know Max likes to play that deliberate pace, but we're going to have to get rocking and rolling here. There's a Water Grave there from Kasun Wong.
Yeah, depending on the actual standings right now, neither player wants to draw. I'm sure that if they're playing instead of drawing, they're probably at the bottom end of the tiebreakers.
And this is something that we did not see from Kasun in the other games. Here's a turn 2 pack rat, basically saying, hey, here I am. Better have an answer for this. Tietze with a Thoughtseize.
Now, of course, Bile Blight in the matchup changes the texture of the game quite a bit.
Indeed. 3 copies of Bile Blight here throughout Max's 75.
You have to ask yourself the question, does he not have an answer to Pack Rat, or is he trying to bait me with Bile Blight?
A couple copies of Underworld Connections among the lands here. There goes the connections, obviously, from the Thoughtseize. Tietze going to play his 2nd land in just a moment. It's a Temple of Silence, little scry action here. Take a look here, consult the grip, see if he likes it or not in just a second.
I'm not sure if that Temple was played 2nd there, but in any case, I like waiting on the Temple there versus the Guildgate. This is, again, a very small thing, but things that separate players from Max from the rest of the field. On the first turn of the game, you're probably looking for lands and spells.
Yeah.
That's likely to be the case, unless your hand is extremely land light or land heavy.
Oh, he's moving in.
On the 2nd turn of the game, you're more likely to know whether or not you're going to want a land or a spell based on what your first draw was, and so you get a more informed scry. This is a small thing, but all these things matter.
Kasun, knowing the time is of the essence, he is moving in here with the Pack Rat. Tietze draws his card, and remember, he kept this card on top with the Temple. There's a Plains. This is a 3 Bile Blight deck. And does he have one of them?
And the Mutavault really throws this for a loop too, because that's an additional +1/+1 on the pack rats.
Wong will draw a card. Gonna play a Swamp. That is a Thoughtseize.
Oh boy. Well, we're gonna find out right now if Max is good.
You see a hand, Hero's Downfall ×2, Obsidian, Whip of Erebos, Desecration Demon, and a copy of Godless Shrine. What that is no Bile Blights.
And again, Kasun's going to be able to get to a point soon where he's actually going to be able to actually outpace Bioblight with the Mutavault in play and by making enough rats.
What to take here? Got the 6/6 flyer, which you can control via Mutavault, a removal spell, or a pack rat. He's got Obsidian, which Tietze is a little way away from. It may not even have an impact on the game. You see the Whip of Erebos, that one certainly slowed to the table. He will go with the Desecration Demon, feeling that he can overwhelm the Hero's Downfalls. And in we go with the pack rats. Kasun with an activation or no? There it is. Discard a Swamp. Here's your Downfall, obviously. Take care of the creature.
Now, the rough part about leaving Max with the Hero's Downfalls, even though they're fairly innocuous against the pack rat, is each Hero's Downfall represents another draw step that Max gets to find Bioblight.
Yeah. Tietze's going to untap. He'll take a draw. There's a Thoughtseize. Turn here could be Godless Shrine, untap, Thoughtseize. You leave up Hero's Downfall.
And Thoughtseize is not shabby here. I'm sure that Underworld Connections is something of an insurance policy. Kasun was hoping that he could leave back, but it basically forces him to just make a rat with the card he draws every turn. And there's some risk with all of that. If Max finds Bioblight in time, that could be a disaster.
Yeah, so this is a Thoughtseize that's going to cost him life. Underworld Connection is going to bite the dust.
It's not even possible that the game could get into such a place where Max is able to play Elspeth and minus away all the rats as well.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
The life is at a premium here, and Max is definitely under the gun, but the game is far from over.
Godless Shrine coming to play on tap. Tietze goes down to 10. Is there a reason to cast him on the main phase, or do you just wait? He may just wait.
Yeah, I think Max might be in a position where he actually wants to tag the Mutavault and not one of the rats.
Okay.
Because if he's on Bioblight or Bust anyway, you might as well maximize it.
He's going to tag one of the rats right now. So Kasun going to untap. He's going to draw. He's pretty much priced in activating pack rat every turn at this point. Not quite sure what the card he drew was, but that certainly gave him a moment of pause. This must have been something good. I'm sure Zrimashwitz is sitting at home saying, just activate the pack rat. Activate the Mutavault. Get in for 3. What are you thinking about?
I can't imagine what's good enough here to warrant this.
My guess is Desecration Demon.
Desecration Demon's also very good here.
Yeah.
And it's a big insurance policy against Bioblight as well.
Yeah. Because like Psychic Strike, I don't really feel does very much. Here's an attack for 1. Activate the Mutavault. I get potentially could be Psychic Strike. He's going to pass the turn back. Wow.
Well, I actually like Psychic Strike because you know about the Obsidian, so it can wait 1 turn.
Yeah.
If Max does nothing of relevance, then you can make a rat. But it's a pretty big insurance against Obsidian or something else happening this
Blood
turn.
Baron, whatever.
Yeah.
I guess Psychic Strike is actually a pretty good draw here. So an attack for 2 from Wong. Just an attack there, as you saw with the pack rat activation. Mutavault makes it 2, puts Tietze down to 8.
Yeah, it gets him one. It's 1 turn, but it gives him
There's
a lot of
whip.
insurance.
Yep, discard a Swamp.
Okay. And then this is.
Lethal?
Yes, it is. I mean, he can make both the rats. It makes a rat and activates Mutavault. That's exactly 8.
Yeah. Does he see this?
Well, we're about to find out. Maybe he's just confirming life totals here.
I'm sure we have our life totals right in our end. That Tietze is at 8.
And Max is just sitting there stone-faced, hoping that Kasun finds a way to bluff himself out of this.
Discard. Yeah, and then activate. Yeah, that should be plenty, right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, okay.
I was hoping we weren't missing something.
Okay.
And we weren't. Kasun Wong is going to win this match over Max Tietze. 2-1. Mono Black Devotion with a small dabble in blue. Defeats Black-White mid-range and a former Invitational champion and multi-time Open Series winner. He's off the bench as we're going to bring it back here in the booth. Cedric Phillips.